Welcome to our channel, Startup Business Management, your trusted resource for practical management know-how. Subscribe and follow us.
Hi, Suri Nanduri here. Welcome to the first session of Startup Business Management series. In this session, we will get to understand the concepts of startup, business, and management. Like in science and engineering, for that matter, any subject, you will always start with definitions and few fundamental laws when you try to learn a subject. Here, too, in this series, we'll try to understand the definitions of startup, business, and management. Not that any of the investors is going to ask you down the line when you're running your business about the definition of a startup. That's not the point here. But there are practical implications of being known as a startup, being recognized as a startup, especially with respect to compliances, taxation, and some incentives. So it's good to know the definition of the startup. Let's get into the details. So, what is a startup? Is there a single universal definition? There is no single standard for what defines a startup company. But there seems to be a widespread connotation about what is called a startup and what is not a startup. So, what does the business community say? In general, the business community recognizes startups as a special class of young companies and that there is a particular work culture that exists within the startups. Not all new companies are called startups, and not all startups are new companies. Are there any parameters and attributes using which we can identify and recognize a startup? There are no fixed parameters on what type of a company can be considered as a startup. So, what is special about these startups? There is no definition and there are no parameters or attributes using which you can identify that a company is a startup. So, the term startup most frequently applies to high tech companies creating products that leverage technology to offer something new or to perform an existing task in a novel way. So, these terms are important. High tech, the company needs to be in a high tech space. Second is products and services leveraging technology. Momentum, right from the start, the companies or the startup has to have a momentum. Scalability, the business model has to be scalable. And finally, and perhaps the most important one, the company should be of interest to a large number of consumers and investors. So let's look at some of the examples of what is not a startup. For instance, you want to start a bakery business as a franchisee to an existing well-known chain, but you want to confine to a single location because probably you want to operate it yourself. So this is clearly not a startup because it's not of interest to large number of investors. At best, you might be attracting investments from few family friends or external investors, but those will be limited in terms of numbers. So this business model is not going to be termed as a startup. This doesn't, of course, mean that this business shouldn't be of interest to you. On the other side, let's look at another startup. For instance, a researcher has developed a new starch in a biotechnology lab, and this product has potential to replace the cornstarch, which is widely used in bakeries. And again, this product offers advantages over the products which are available in the market. Maybe the glucose content, half of what the existing products have. So this startup is definitely of interest to large number of consumers and investors. Why? Because this product has the potential to go into every bakery in this world. isn't it? So the business model is scalable, and there will be a good number of investors who will be interested in such kind of a business. So the first one was a bakery business, but it wasn't a scalable business and not of interest to many investors. But the second one is a scalable business model and certainly is of interest to investors. So the second one is a startup, but the first one was not a startup. Not so young, but still called startups. So there are two companies very popular in India. I think most of you who are from India would have heard about these two companies. Ola, EV company, started in 2017, and this company went for IPO very recently. Until last year, before the IPO, this company was still perceived as a startup in India. The second one is Swiggy, started in 2014. It's an online ordering and delivery platform, and this company too is planning for IPO in 2024. Both these companies, despite having started many years ago, are still being called startup companies. At least Swiggy is still being called as a startup company. Ola, of course, went IPO, and many companies after that IPO will no longer be called as startup companies. So, what are these startup attributes common to these two companies? High tech companies. Ola is a high tech company operating in the EV space. Leveraging technology, Swiggy developed a platform on using their technology for scaling up ordering and delivery business. Both these companies had tremendous momentum right from the beginning, and the business models were highly scalable. And of course, as we saw, Ola has already gone public, and Swiggy is also attracted a lot of attention from investors. So these two companies are clearly, despite having started many years ago, are still called startup companies. So not all new companies are called startup companies. We have seen the example of a bakery, and not all startups are new companies. Going by the examples of Ola and Swiggy. In the next video, we will explore some of the top startup friendly nations of this world.